we have Olga Khazan, who is a staff writer for The Atlantic and the author of Me, But Better. She has written for the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and many other publications. She is a two-time recipient of journalism fellowships from the International Reporting Project and winner of the 2017 National Headliner Award for Magazine Online Writing. She lives with her husband and son in Northern Virginia. Hassan will be in conversation with Daniel Pink. Pink is the author of 5 New York Times bestsellers, including his latest, The Power of Regret, How Looking Backwards Moves Us Forward. His other books include the New York Times bestsellers When and A Whole New Mind, as well as the #1 New York Times bestsellers Drive and To Sell Is Human. Dan's books have won multiple awards and have been translated into 46 languages and have sold millions of copies worldwide. So without further ado, let's welcome them both tonight.
All right, thank you. Welcome to Politics and Prose. Let's give a big hand for independent bookstores before we get started, yeah. Even more urgent today than they were a few months ago. So I'm so happy to be here with Olga. This is such a great book. I mean, you can learn so much in it, and it's just so enjoyable to read. And there is truly, I mean, there is a line in every chapter in this book about a serious topic that made me laugh out loud. So it's just a joy to read, and it's really smart and really interesting. So, Olga, thanks for writing it.
Thank you so much.
I learned a lot. So this book begins, bear with me here. I have to go to my hymn book and make sure that I'm singing properly. This book begins with basically a wine-soaked meltdown.
Yes.
And where you say, and I just want to make sure I'm quoting, can I quote you?
Oh, yeah.
All right. My life is nothing but nonstop stress and torture. I hate everyone and everything. I can't take this anymore, and we're not having a fucking kid. Okay, so please explain how that became a catalyst for this book.
Okay, so what you have to understand is that I was getting professional photos taken that day. And before I got the photos taken, I really had to get a haircut because it had gone too long. You know how it is. Okay, so I went to go get this haircut. The haircut was very bad, to the point where when I got to the photo studio, he said, "Do you want to do something about your hair?" Right away. Okay, so we took the photos. The photos also did not look good in my opinion. Then I got stuck in traffic. Then I had this weird debacle with the shopping cart at the grocery store, like where it got stuck because it was out of range and they thought I was trying to steal the shopping cart. And I had to like drag it across this hot parking lot because this is all happening in Florida. And then I got stuck in more traffic. It was just this whole thing. Oh, and this entire time this is happening, my boss is like slacking me edits on a story, like, "Hey, can you fix this? Hey, can you fix this?" And I'm like dragging the cart and like my hair looks awful. Anyway, so that is what led to that. And shortly after the meltdown,
but you don't write a book about one bad day,
right? But I realized not long after that meltdown that you describe, that I do this kind of a lot. That like I have a series of aggravations that are not objectively that bad, but I somehow find the worst in them, and it keeps me from enjoying my life. Because right now I would honestly kill for like an hour to get a haircut, even if it's bad.
Right. Right. And so, but you sense that there was something maybe that you could improve within yourself.
Yes.
Right. So tell us about that. What did you sense, and what give us a sense of the impulse behind writing this book? Because this is a book that is about how Olga tried to change her personality, which seems like a daunting task.
So what I kind of realized is that this tendency of mine, this like I hate everyone and everything tendency, was related to a very high level of this personality trait called neuroticism, which is basically depression and anxiety. And this level of neuroticism was really, it was kind of bringing me down. It was sucking the joy out of life. It was keeping me from being grateful, keeping me from being happy, essentially. So I kind of like, through my job, just like read a lot of psychology literature, and I came across this research that shows that you can actually change your personality if you kind of make steps to do so. And I took this personality test that this same researcher published, and it showed me that my, at the time, combination of personality traits was sort of correlated with like the least functional, least happy people. And I was like, okay, I should do something about this.
Okay, and so when you believed it, you could do something about it. So let's talk about what those personality traits are. How many of you are familiar with the concept of the big five in personality? Okay, so that's a fair amount. So why don't you tell us about what the big five are, these personality traits? So when we talk about, it's a way to define personality. Explain what they are.
Okay, so there's like Atlantic writers here who definitely know this, so I will try to make it brief. So you can remember them with the acronym OCEAN. So it's openness to experiences, which is like creativity and imaginativeness. C for conscientiousness, which is like productivity, being organized, being timely. E for extraversion, which is like being friendly and cheerful and just active. A for agreeableness, which is being warm and empathetic and also trusting of other people. And then N for neuroticism, which is the bad one, which is depression and anxiety.
Okay, so what I love about this is that it's a great narrative arc. So you're going to measure yourself at the beginning, you're going to try this stuff, and you're going to measure yourself at the end. So give us your measurements at the beginning.
So my measurements at the beginning, I was very low in extroversion, especially with the part of extroversion that had to do with being friendly and cheerful.
Yeah.
Like like in particular that part. I was, I think, higher than 97% of people on neuroticism.
Yeah, I think it was, my notes say 94th percentile, so don't brag.
Yeah,
okay?
sorry, yeah.
You weren't that neurotic. All right, so
I-
you're 94th percentile in neuroticism. That's pretty high.
Yeah, and I was about average on agreeableness. I had a lot of empathy for people, but I had very low trust in them.
Okay. And then, all right. And then, so what are we missing here? Openness. You were high on openness.
Yeah, I was high on openness and conscientiousness. I've always been high on those, and
Right.
I did not try to change
Okay, so
those.
you're high on openness, and you're high. Well, you did a little on openness.
Yes.
You're high on openness. You're high on conscientiousness, but you really want to work on getting down your neuroticism,
Yes.
getting up your agreeableness, and getting up your extroversion. So let's start with what did you do? Pick one of those, and tell us what you did and what you learned and whether it worked.
Yeah, so for extroversion is probably the simplest one for anyone who wants to work on it. You basically just have to go out and talk to people, which I really...
Sounds horrible.
Yeah. Well, it was for me when I started. I really did not want to do this. You kind of go out and just socialize. You can make small talk with like your barista or your mailman, or you can do what I did, which is actually sign up for an improv class. Which is like extreme extroversion. I also joined like this sailing club, even though I don't really know how to sail. And yeah, I just did a ton of socializing.
Right, and so you knew you were an extrovert. Did you always consider yourself an introvert?
I had always, like when I took the Myers-Briggs, it kind of put me like on the midline, but I think over time I sort of became more introverted.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you want to weigh in on whether you think Myers-Briggs is worthy?
So Myers-Briggs is not considered like totally accurate, though I know a lot of people really like it. So I'm not trying to take that from you if you like the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, no, I think Myers-Briggs is bullshit, but
So
then
do you
again, I'm an
think-
INTJ, so
Yeah.
but there are but the measure that you use to measure introversion extroversion is, I think,
It's a little
quite
more,
a good
yeah,
one. Yeah,
it's sort
and
of
it's a
like,
spectrum.
It's
Explain
a
that.
spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all like on a sliding scale. So it doesn't put you in a category. It tells you like where you rank.
Right, and then I'm going to try to quote some of the great Olga lines in here. So she has what I think is, I wrote in my margin notes, the single best definition of introverts that I've ever heard. She says, because I'm an introvert myself, she says, "We flinch when someone says karaoke." So what did it? Starting to talk to people, starting to do these things to be more extroverted. Did it work?
So it did work for me, but it was interesting because I had so much dread, and in particular when it came to improv, pretty much for the first, I would say 4 or 5 months that I was doing improv, every time I would go, I like really, really hoped that I could get into a car accident on the way there so that I wouldn't have to go and like play Zip Zap Zop with strangers.
Right.
And that never
tell
happened.
Tell them what Zip Zap Zop is.
So Zip Zap Zop is a warm-up game. It's not even improv. It's like what you do to warm up for improv, and you like do like you stand in a circle and you say Zip Zap Zop like in a sequence while like whooshing like this at each other.
We'll do it later.
Sure. Yeah. And then we'll do karaoke. No, and it was terrifying. It was really, really terrifying for me. I have stage fright. I don't like being silly. Like, it just is not my sense of humor at all. But what I found is that, so I would dread going, I would get there, I would kind of do it. It was a really long class. It lasted 2.5 hours. And by the end, I was like usually very happy. Like, I was like kind of smiling to myself and like sometimes giggling to myself. And I found that like almost always something kind of funny would happen, or it was just like, I don't know, fun to be like silly and playful, like after like reading studies all day. And I just found myself having a good time. And I that's what I like found with extroversion, is that kind of forcing myself to do these things actually ended up being fun.
Well, one of the things that you write is that the way we change our personalities is essentially to be what we want to become, essentially, right?
Yes.
Is that and that behaving against our natures doesn't bother us as much as we think.
Yeah, so they've actually done research where they had introverts go out and act like extroverts, like socialize with people for a few minutes. And then when the introverts came back, they were like, okay, so how do you feel? And they're like, I feel happier. And then they also said, I feel more true to myself, even though they were being extroverted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it kind of like doesn't really matter if you're not acting like yourself.
Right. So, I mean, so essentially the guidance is fake it till you become it.
Yes.
I mean, on some of these things here. And you also decided to do something that was also counter to your nature, I think, which was to start hosting parties.
Yes, I host.
How did that mesh with your neuroticism?
It really meshed. I get very obsessive about like people having a good time in my space. And so that was like a big test of that. But you know, I like at that point in the book, I was still drinking a lot. So I think I like kind of like drank to like quell the terror a little bit.
Sure.
Like I think at this point I could probably do it without that. Yeah.
Really? Because there is a degree. Like, again, can I read another of your great lines here? When you were planning your party, you said, "I cleaned our house to make it look like no one lived there, like it was merely haunted by ghosts who made charcuterie boards." So that's intense.
I don't know if that came through or not to the people at the party.
But there is a. But what I think what's really interesting here, again, we have this story where you measure yourself at this time, you do something, and you measure yourself again. So you do these things, you take improv, you host parties, you talk to strangers to try to boost it. You measure yourself again, and what happened?
So my extroversion went up. I think it went up to, at that point, to high, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I think I just found that I like enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would.
Now, how much do these interventions stick? Like, is this like how lasting? Are they ephemeral? Are they enduring? Are they somewhere in between?
It depends on how long you do the activities.
Okay.
Interestingly, so I like kept this up for a while, like a year for the book, and then like a little while longer. And then I got pregnant, so I couldn't do as many activities. And then I had a baby, and I had a really rough postpartum, and I took the test during my postpartum period, and all of my like scores like crashed, like, and just cratered, like, and except for neuroticism, which was super high. So yeah, I mean, they can erode, you know, if you don't keep it up.
Right. And then give us a sense, you write a little bit about this, about how much of our personalities are the product of our genes, how much are the product of how we were raised, how much of the product of the broader environment we're in. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so about 30 to 50% of our personalities are genetic. This doesn't mean that you're like 50% like your parents, because you get, you know, your genes from your parents, but they kind of get combined in different ways. That's why like most people don't look exactly like their parents, for example. And that other 50% is what researchers call environment, and it's kind of nebulous. It's not literally the environment, though, like the weather and like where, like, you know, whether it's a city or like a farm can have some impact. It's really like your friend group, what kind of job you have, whether you're married, who your friends are. You know, it's so many other factors. Even it's not even like that much like how you were raised. So like it's not even like people are like, oh, is the other half like your parents telling you like good job, you know, or whatever. But it's really just this weird tapestry of a bunch of other things.
Interesting. And you write, I mean, I think one of the interesting findings in general in psychology is how little parenting, the relatively modest effect of parenting on, especially on things like personality and intelligence and other kinds of outcomes, for all of the obsessiveness that we parents apply to that task.
Yes.
But you write a little bit. I thought it was really interesting. You were not born in this country.
No.
And you were raised in suburban Texas.
Yes.
To immigrants from Russia. So that's a pretty interesting environment. To what extent do you think it's affected, you make little hints about it in the book, to what extent has that affected your personality?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because, like, I think my parents have a certain way of looking at the world, and then the people I grew up around have a very, very, very different way of looking at the world. And I think that my outlook is sort of maybe like a combination of those in some ways, or like even sometimes I feel like I flip between the two. But yeah, it's, you kind of end up being a lot like the people you spend a lot of time around. And so I've actually, at this point, spent the most time in DC and the environs. So I would say that I'm most like other people in DC rather than either of those.
Okay, interesting. Even though in the book you talk about wanting perhaps to move to Florida.
Yes, I do still want to move to Florida. Okay. I was waiting for interest rates to go down and they went up.
Okay. And all right, so let's talk about another, pick another facet of something that you tried to change and tell us the story. Tell us where you were, what you did, and then what happened.
Okay, so on to neuroticism, which was like my big boss. I really wanted to reduce my neuroticism. I was really desperately looking for any way to do that is not meditation, because I really, really did not want to meditate. And unfortunately, they're all meditation. It's like, and like every article that you read that's like, the secret to like taming your anxiety. And then it's like, you click on it and it's like, it's meditation. And so I did a bunch of different types of meditation. I downloaded an app and I did loving kindness meditation, which is very good when you're like just feeling very vulnerable and you feel like you need to like parent yourself kind of. I also, the kind of longest meditation I did is this thing called MBSR, which has been like really studied pretty extensively and has been shown to reduce depression and anxiety about as well as Lexapro. So I signed up for that, and what that consisted of is basically 45-minute long meditations every single day, along with a class that we all took where it was kind of like Buddhism for dummies, I would say, like very, very dumbed down teachings from Buddhism. That honestly, that part of the class, looking back, was probably the most helpful thing for me, just because like I am someone who needs like a little phrase or like something to fall back on whenever I am having a really tough time, and like those phrases are the things that I like remind myself of the most.
Okay, and you also, I mean, you found that interesting. You talk about using this loving. Well, describe what loving kindness meditation is for folks who don't know. So
loving kindness meditation, you can do it like with a script that like plays for you, or you can just do it like to yourself in your own head. But you're like, you wish yourself like happiness and health and like. Well-being, and for things to be easy for you and not difficult, I think was another one of the lines. And then you do it. So you do it for yourself. You do it for a close friend, and then you do it for a difficult person. Yeah. And that's that's level 3.
How was you didn't write about the difficult person, but how was that for you, doing it for a difficult person?
I honestly didn't do it for a difficult person that much. I'm sorry. It's like really hard because you're like, oh, like you're so wonderful and you deserve good things, and it's like this person who just like pissed you off so much.
Yeah. You have a guy. Well, we'll get to anger management later, but you have a guy in the anger management class who had a different view of that. So
yes.
I thought one of the things that really was sort of fascinating and even touching is that you said that sometimes when you do loving kindness meditation, it makes you cry.
Yeah, a lot of people cry during loving kindness meditation. I don't generally cry, so I was kind of surprised by this, but it is very, I don't know, it's like very touching to like say these things to yourself, because like a lot of my internal monologue, at least, is like not very kind. So it's like a big like change for me personally.
And so essentially, what you're doing is you're being nice to yourself.
Yes.
And that makes you cry.
Yeah. But it makes a lot of people cry. I'm not just
no, I'm not saying that. I'm not attacking you for this. I'm just observing it. It's kind of I find it interesting. How much have you thought about why that is?
Yeah, I think it's like I don't know. I just always cry when people are nice to me, and so like I'm not really nice to myself.
So no, it's a good interview when you start weeping, right?
I guess yeah. Like whenever my therapist is like, "You're working so hard and you're doing I'm like, thank you. Like, I don't know.
Okay, and then you also in the neuroticism, you talk a lot about in the neuroticism chapter about striving and being a striver, which I think is something that a lot of people. So we look at all the heads nodding here. Something that I certainly can relate to. Tell us about striving and neuroticism and their compatibility, if any.
Yeah, so this is a thing that people who are high in neuroticism, who want to reduce their neuroticism, but who have like a lot of goals that they want to achieve, they struggle with, because it can start to feel like you need anxiety in order to succeed. And really what you need is like enthusiasm about your goal, but not necessarily anxiety. So you don't actually need the like worry and the revisiting and the like ruminating. You kind of just need that like, yay, like let's go get him attitude. And so what really was helpful for me, weirdly, was this quote from David Axelrod, who the political consultant, who said that one way he thought about political campaigns was all we can do is everything we can do.
Yeah.
And basically that just means that like really all you can do is, prepare, you can work hard, you can, set yourself up for success, but you can't ensure good outcomes. And for me, that was like very, I don't know, again, I need the little mantras, because it was like very helpful for me to hear that like you can't actually ensure that everything goes perfectly. Like all you can do is set yourself up, and then, fate or God or whoever takes over.
Right. Act without attachment to the fruits of your actions.
Exactly.
Like that
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, all right, so you're very neurotic at the beginning. You do these weeping-inducing loving kindness meditations and mantras from political consultants. How did it work?
It goes down to low.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to depression. So my anxiety is still high, like at that point in the book. But it went from extremely high to high. So, but my depression went from like high to low, basically.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And your neuroticism seemed to be sort of the thing that was haunting you the most. What's it like today? When did you finish this book? You said a year ago?
I finished it like at this point, like a year and 9 months ago.
Okay, so you finished the book a while ago, and so where's your neuroticism now, and what are you doing to tamp it down?
Honestly, I feel like it is still low, because I just took a test and it still registers as low.
Wow.
And it's been really helpful for stuff like actually this book launch, because like there's really no way to guarantee success of a book. Like you can kind of try really hard and you can like do events like this.
It's like a political campaign.
Yes.
Sometimes the voters are right, sometimes the voters are wrong.
So you like wake up on the morning of launch day and you're just like, okay, like here goes nothing. And I really feel like it was like so helpful for me because my reaction to the launch of my first book was it was also like a worse situation because it was COVID, but that time for me was so much more stressful, and like I didn't like have any glow or like basking in like this accomplishment. I was just like, oh my God, like why aren't the reviews better? Like why aren't there more blah blah blahs? Like it was more obsessive.
Right. Okay. So you worked on your extraversion. You worked on your neuroticism. Let's talk about agreeableness, and let's talk about what agreeableness is.
So agreeableness is like those people that you talk to that are just like a warm hug. Like they're just so like talking to them just feels so cozy. They're just like very active listeners. These people have like BFFs that they call every night. They're just like these cuddly, friendly creatures.
Which was not you.
No.
And so I don't remember where you tested on agreeableness, but sort of middling, right?
I was middling, and then I actually dipped to low for a while, and now I'm like on the lower end of high. Like I'm like medium,
Okay.
medium
All right.
high.
So let's talk about. So you did some. So there are a couple of really interesting things in that. Some of the things that you did in that chapter. You tell us about. You went to anger management.
Yes. Yeah, I took an anger management class because I noticed that a lot of the time I would get very angry at my husband. And I was like, I don't know what that's about, and I don't know how to fix that. Like yelling more is like not working. And so I took this class. That class was like kind of a weird bust. Like that also had a bunch of like watered down little mantras and lessons and things, but none of them were especially helpful. But it was actually like learning from the other people in the class that was probably the most helpful element of it.
Right. See, just like you like these little mantras, I like these Olga-isms that are in the book. And you said, so you went to the anger management class, and you say, I quickly learned that I was the only person who hadn't been court-ordered to attend.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So, and you also learned about forgiveness in there. Did that play a role? Some people in your class were skeptical of forgiveness.
Yeah. So it was like, so they like kind of walked us through like how not to get so angry, and then like how to forgive, how to like, they just had like weird little metaphors and things. But honestly, the thing that really made a difference was we all kind of as a class figured out that when we understand someone's motivations or like the motivations behind their actions, that tends to make us less angry. So we're like bona fide like rageaholics, but we all could think of times when, a friend who was always late, we figured out the reason is because like, one woman said like her friend always checks the like plugs in her house because she was in a fire, and now she like can't leave the house without checking to be sure everything's unplugged, and how that really helped her be less angry at this friend who was always late because she had like a really good explanation. And I kind of noticed that's true for me too. Like sometimes just understanding someone's motives, like what's really behind what's going on, is it can really reduce my anger.
Okay, and so you mentioned BFFs, and in order to get one, you went to an app.
Yeah, I did Bumble BFF.
Right, which is actually a real thing. I didn't believe it at first when I was reading it, but it is Bumble BFF.
Yes.
Tell us about that. That's crazy.
It's not crazy. My Bumble BFF is here tonight.
Oh no! Wait, where's your
That's
Bumble
how it
BFF?
worked.
Hold on. All right, let's give a big hand to the Bumble BFF. Yeah, there you go.
It works.
Okay, so it's not crazy at all. Forgive me.
Yeah.
I'm very low on agreeableness, as you can tell. So tell us about Bumble BFF.
So Bumble BFF, you literally are like swiping through profiles of women, and you're like messaging them like, "Hey, want to hang out?" And then you hang out. And like if you click, you can become BFFs.
Okay, and then what's the next? What happens after that? Do you go on like a coffee date or something like that?
Yeah, I mean,
you hang out.
Well, like normally, so like the coffee date, like you have like maybe a coffee date. It's kind of like dating. Like you have a coffee date, and then you like. So one thing I did with a group of other like women who I did not end up being BFFs with is we went to a Pitbull concert together for like. It took like all day. We were together for like 9 hours, which is, I wouldn't recommend that for a Bumble BFF date.
Okay. All right, hold on. Let me make that note here. And the other thing, which I think is interesting, and it's a lesson that again, as someone, I myself I test pretty middling to low in agreeableness, pretty middling to low in extraversion. So like I needed some of these things, and I've been trying to sort of fake it for most of my life to try to push myself a little higher on that spectrum. And one of the things that you write about here is how much having conversations with people that are deep actually is valuable. That asking somebody, how was your flight, is not the ideal question. And asking somebody, deeper kinds of questions. And we underestimate people's willingness to engage in those kinds of things.
Yeah, so one thing I noticed, so part of agreeableness is having like deeper friendships and relationships. And one thing I noticed is that like often when I was talking with someone outside of work, I would kind of just default to small talk because I thought that's what people wanted. That's not what people want. People don't like small talk. They want to be asked like deep, meaningful questions. But I kind of like could never think of any, or like I thought it would be awkward. So I actually went to this like conversation workshop in London, and they like taught us how to have more meaningful conversations. And one of the big takeaways from that is like you should just ask people like why something is important to them.
Yeah.
Like if they share something like, oh, like let's say they did take, American Airlines, to get here, you could be like, oh, is flying American like important to you? Are you one of those people who's loyal to air, and that kind of opens up a avenue to more interesting, conversation.
Yeah, and also you have this notion here, which is a great phrase of what's called hydroponic friendship as a way to foster these deeper connections to people.
Yeah, this is this idea from one of the friendship experts that I talked to, who thinks that like she actually gave me the idea for the Pitbull concert, where she thinks that you should spend like a ton of time with someone in order to become good friends with them. So
intense, concentrated at the beginning.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not sure again if the Pitbull concert was the best idea, but but this has worked for me in the past. Like when I've been on reporting trips with someone and you're like together all the, like 24 hours a day for weeks sometimes, like I am still friends with those people because you have no other option.
You feel like the agreeableness boost that you've gotten is lasting, enduring?
I think so, but that is honestly, if I'm being totally honest, that's the hardest one for me. Because so much of it is mental. Like so much of it is like choosing to see people in this like more forgiving, more positive way. Yeah. And like that's just very easy to slip out of. Actually, in these studies that I write about, like not that many people choose to increase their agreeableness. Like people don't like think it's valuable, and then when they try, it's like very hard. It doesn't increase as much as the other traits. So yeah, and I've found that to be true.
But you have you close that chapter in a lovely way here. And forgive me, I think your writing is so good. I just like to, I like to just say it and pretend like I wrote it. You say you earn intimacy by showing intimacy to somebody. During my months of agreeableness, I answered humanity's knock and subconsciously learned it came in peace. That is, like, most people are fundamentally good and want to connect and are interesting. And I think that's just I need to remind myself of that. So thank you for the therapy. Let's talk about some of these traits and how they connect to other facets of our life. So, like, are some of these things more important in relationships? Are some of these things more important in careers? Are some of these things more important in parenting?
Yeah, so I would say conscientiousness, the thing that is most important, conscientiousness is the thing that's most important for any type of career success. So getting a raise, getting a job, getting a promotion. Bosses love conscientiousness. They love conscientious people. They're always on time. They always meet deadlines. They always they're just like the people that you want working for you. That's a big reason why people want to increase on conscientiousness, is maybe because they see opportunities that could come their way if they were more conscientious. A couple of the people that I talked to actually wanted to, one of them had never studied before. Like he was in college and he had never studied before, had never written a paper before, but he wanted to become a professional academic. So he needed to like rapidly increase on conscientiousness in order to even know how to like write papers and get good grades. Another person wanted,
and he did it.
Yeah,
that's a good story. Yeah, he went in as kind of a sort of a teenage ne'er-do-well, and then
he bought a book called like How to Make A's, and he learned how to make A's. And someone else wanted to like start her own business. So it can be helpful for also those like transition moments where you're not sure how to get to the next level.
So conscientious. So you were already very high in conscientiousness, but you tried a few things. I was surprised to see the technique of decluttering as a conscientiousness move?
Yeah, so this is something that came through in a lot of my interviews. So first of all, I talked to several home organizers for this, like for people who want to be less messy, and basically all they do is help you declutter. Like they don't actually like clean anything. They just like come and help you throw away your stuff. So I don't have this problem because I love throwing stuff away. But apparently like people really struggle with this, and like that's a lot of their job is to come over and like be like, this is not, is this still important to you? Like this band on this t-shirt doesn't exist anymore. Like, and just toss all that stuff. But the same thing kind of applies with obligations, meetings, things that are like we've dedicated ourselves to that are maybe like not serving us as much anymore. So there's been a couple books like Essentialism is like one of them that kind of suggests that like maybe you're not doing as well as you want because you're trying to do too much. And so just kind of decluttering like other elements of your life can be one way to become more conscientious.
Yeah. I thought that was quite interesting. And the other interesting technique that you try, so I would like to try decluttering myself. The second technique that you tried, which I do not intend to try, is that you cut back on your drinking.
Yes.
So how did that go? And why?
Why? So
because you were not into it. At first.
Yeah. So I never drank like too much. So I drank, you're allowed to drink 7 drinks a week if you're female. I drank 7, right? Like the maximum that you were allowed to have, I didn't have 8. Okay. Like no one come and arrest me. So I wasn't like a problem drinker, but I really felt like I was like, I have to drink a glass of wine every single day, and if I don't, I feel like something is wrong.
Yeah.
And I kind of just wanted to like break free of that. And also anytime I was doing any kind of socializing, I really basically felt like I had to be drinking. And I don't know, I just didn't really like that. I didn't like that I had to have this crutch, and that if I didn't have it, I like couldn't do anything. And I also was messing with my sleep, because I'm old. So yeah, I just decided to cut back.
And did it increase your conscientiousness, or is that a form of conscientiousness? I wasn't quite sure on that.
So it's a form of like people who are conscientious don't tend to overindulge in any vices. Basically, they're just like very virtuous all the time. So I would say that I was never like an overindulger in alcohol, but I felt like my one contribution to conscientiousness, I guess, was to just cut back.
Now, in the book, you talk a lot about your, as you tell the story of this, you're contemplating a move to Florida. You're working on improving your personality, bringing down the neuroticism, bringing up the openness, bringing up the agreeableness. But you talk about some choices you and your now husband are making about, should we have a kid, should we not have a kid? And what a great surprise! Well, what a great surprise at the end of the book to learn. The book ends. I mean, it's perfect for a sequel. Like you're pregnant, and now you're a mom.
Yes.
So how is that? Has that made you a better person? Has that made you still me, but better?
So after the initial postpartum period, which again was rough, I will say I am often very happy that I did this before I became a mom, because I think my approach to parenthood is like quite different than it would have been otherwise.
How so?
So I was really never a joiner. I kind of felt like I felt like I didn't really need a lot of friends, but also just like any social connections, even like acquaintances. Like I didn't really need a community is how I'd always lived my life. And really, some of the first things I did as a new mom is like join a mom's group, reach out to other moms in my neighborhood for like play dates and things. And honestly, that has been one of the best things I've done. It has honestly been such a lifesaver to have other moms to reach out to, even if it's just texting, because sometimes that's all we have time for. Just having like that shared experience, because it can get like so hard and so lonely. I honestly think I would have just tried to white knuckle through it myself before, and I'm just really glad I didn't do that.
Now, your son is now 1?
Yes.
And so has it changed your view of personality? Do you believe more in the big 5? Do you believe less in the big 5? Do you see glimmers of openness or agreeableness or anything in him yet?
So he is very smiley and happy, and my parents have told me that I was not that way as a baby. So it's made me think like maybe he just takes after my husband, but I don't know. I am kind of curious what his personality will be like. I feel like we're seeing glimmers of it, but he's honestly like so chaotic, and he's also just like still trying things. Like he'll just try a different facial expression every day.
Why not?
And he's like, is this anything? Like, I don't know. I don't know how he'll turn out.
And so should we go out to the audience, take some questions now? Let's go out and take some questions here. We're gonna, if you have questions for Olga, we'll go around with the mic. I got tons more. But tell me your questions.
Anyone?
Hi.
Hi.
The book sounds amazing. I have two questions.
It's very good. You should buy multiple copies and give them away.
Done. Number one, did you find that it's kind of hard to retest yourself because is the ocean test dynamic enough, or are you secretly like sort of cheating in a way where you are getting better, but you actually know what the right answers are to make yourself look better? And then my second question was just, given all the stuff you were doing to get better, how did that go over with your husband pre-baby?
Yeah, good questions. So you can, if you really try, you can game the ocean test. Like it's just no one's like looking over your shoulder to see what you're doing. Like it is totally based on yourself. I will say that personality is also just based on how you feel. Like there really we all like kind of decide what we're going to be like, and that is personality. I will say that the tests that I took have like 300 questions. So it's really hard to remember like what you said last time, especially if you're taking like a few months between each one. And then what did my husband think? I don't know, husband, what did you think? He's not neurotic.
Wait,
Yeah.
Can we know is it all right to ask your husband's where your husband scores on these criteria on the ocean?
Did I take it? I think I did.
You took
Did you
it, but
take
I
it?
think you did it wrong because I don't agree with your results.
Wait. You're working on agreeableness. Remember?
Oh, right, sweethart.
It's a lot of questions. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That I think it was cool when you were doing it. You did some travel, which was whatever. I got to play with my toys and stuff. I don't know what I'm supposed to say here.
No, but do we know where you are on like openness, conscientiousness?
I am the opposite. Like we're like it's puzzle pieces. Like my whatever the C stands for is the worst.
He's
You're
not
low on conscientiousness.
Yeah,
I
he's
didn't even
really
notice
low.
why you yelled at him sometimes in the book.
Yeah.
So you're low on conscientiousness.
Yeah.
Okay. You are. Where are you on openness?
He's high on openness,
high.
but that's because open people don't really like to be with people who aren't open.
I can see that. That makes perfect sense. But you're also very low on neuroticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can I read another Olgaism? It's because it's about you. Whether it's because he's an American, a man, a Gentile, or some combination of the three, he doesn't experience anxiety. True or false?
True, actually. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so let's keep this going a little bit. Do we know anything about matching in personality? Do people in romantic relationships go to folks who are like them, who complement them?
So the big one where people do tend to match is openness. The other ones are like a little bit less clear, and part of that is that there are gender differences on a lot of the other
Tell
ones.
us about those. Yeah.
So women tend to have much higher neuroticism than men do. So it would be like unusual to find a man who's like as neurotic as me, for example, or as I was. So agreeableness is one where women are higher generally, even though I think Rich is higher than me on agreeableness. So openness is the one, and you can actually see that with like a political sorting, like how liberals like to date other liberals, because openness is correlated with liberalism.
Yeah.
And so you don't see a lot of like mixing partisanship in relationships, and part of that is just like how negative things have become, but part of that is because like people just don't really like mesh with people who are opposite to them on openness.
On openness, but what about something like extraversion?
Yeah, that's interesting. I do not know. I would imagine that extroverts kind of find each other, but I bet that's probably mostly because they have like similar interests and like,
Yeah, could be.
you know.
How about some more questions from out here in the crowd? We have one over here and then over here.
Has your use of social media changed? Because I know, like with me, sometimes like being neurotic or depressed or anxious I can get that way when I look at social media. So I was just wondering if you changed how you use it.
Yeah, I kind of stopped posting much in general on any platform. I used to, like, Twitter used to be a big part of my life, I would say, and now it's just really not. I just kind of don't post. And I also just don't look at it much. If I do, I'm kind of like, ugh, and kind of just close it. I don't know. But part of that was like the Elon Musk takeover, which happened around the same time. So I don't know. Yeah.
So of all the experiments and experiences you put yourself through for this project, what do you think were the one or two most influential and why?
Improv was the most influential. And then...
And why?
Why? I kind of think everyone should take an improv class, because, especially if you kind of don't want to, because I honestly think it is such good practice with being out of control, like with just like not being able to control what's happening and kind of having to like go with the flow anyway. It's just such a useful life skill, and there's really nothing else that can allow you to practice that in a safe way that is also like fun and like engaging. It's just, I don't know, to me it's it honestly just, it helped me like think about people in a different way. It also helps you like learn how to read people better, like kind of what is that person going to do next? What are they going to say next? Like, where is the scene going? I don't know. To me, that's I just think everyone should do it once.
Great.
So I thought what you said about introversion was really interesting, about how people that self-defined as introverts, when they acted as extroverts, they found that they were more true to themselves and happier. And I feel like, at least with my friends, or I've seen the common understanding being that it's very fixed. You're either an introvert or an extrovert, and there's really not a lot of breathing room. What's your kind of take on that, especially after trying all of these different things and all of the studies that you've read?
So I think that you can definitely identify as an introvert. But one thing that I kind of took from the research and just from my own experience is that having occasional extroverted moments is kind of necessary for everyone, even introverts. And that often like those moments of like really pushing yourself and like trying to get out, trying to be around other people, trying to connect, can actually pull you out of a funk or just like feeling isolated or just kind of out of sorts, more than just like retreating into yourself and, doing Netflix again, by yourself. Like as someone who loves to watch Netflix by myself, like it's something where sometimes you kind of need to do the opposite of what comes most naturally. And you don't have to do it all the time. You don't have to become a car salesman, but like, it is helpful to occasionally break out of your comfort zone. And I think that's why people are getting that like happiness boost when they do that.
One here and then in the front. Oh, okay, sorry.
So during this whole time and this experience, was your therapist absolutely loving this? Or, did they say anything that they supported or kind of warned you against doing?
I think my therapist has literally never read anything and like does not know that things are written down. Every time I talk about my job or anything that I'm doing, she sounds so confused. Like I was like talking to her. I've had the same therapist for like 8 years now. And I was like, yeah. So like in journalism, yada, yada, journalism, like journalists. And she's like, yeah. So in your job in journaling, and I'm like, Do you think I like journal? Like, is that what you? Yeah, I have no idea what she thought. I honestly don't know. She's in network.
Yeah, Miranda.
That was great improv. So I noticed you said earlier that it would have been hard to find somebody as neurotic as you are, and then you corrected yourself and then said, as I was.
Yeah.
And it made me wonder how this change in personality has affected your sense of self. Like, do you feel like there was an old Olga? Like, what's your relationship to the person you were a few years ago?
I would say I feel the same but happier. Like, I honestly, so I don't think I would maybe necessarily describe myself as an introvert anymore. Like, I still need a lot of alone time, but I wouldn't say that I'm like someone who can't handle extroversion, or like I probably wouldn't like turn down plans or like turn down an opportunity to be around other people. So that has changed a little bit, but honestly, like I was never one of those people. Like, I love Susan Cain. I think she's like really smart. I liked her book a lot. And I think there's like a lot of useful stuff there, but I was never someone who was like, I'm an introvert and like nobody questioned that. It's so important to me. Like, I was sort of just like, I'm kind of like this. So I don't know. It hasn't really bothered me to like change some of those things, I guess.
Yeah. Let me pick up on that. It's an interesting question, because I think one of the things that we sort of the fallacy we have about ourselves is that we are, you ask people, are you different? Forget about people doing self-experimentation. You ask somebody, are you different from the way you were 15 years ago? And then they say, oh my God, I'm so different. I'm this different in this way. And then you say, well, now forecast out another 15 years. Are you going to be different 15 years from now? Oh, no. And so we have this notion that we're somehow finished, but we're never, we're never finished.
Yeah, I love that classic Dan Gilbert study where he just like asks people like, oh, do you think you've changed? And they're like, yeah. But then they think they're done changing. Like,
right.
Yeah.
But we're not done changing. So
Yeah.
let me pick up on that. We'll go back to the audience for a second, because I think it's sort of bubbling around here. There are changes that happen in our personality that are not self-created. That is, they're broad patterns as we get older, and changes in personality. Tell us about some of those.
Yeah, so even if you don't even if you don't buy my book and don't do anything that's in it, you will probably change. Most people become more conscientious and less neurotic as they get older, and they also become more agreeable. So there's a concept called the maturity principle. So it kind of just has to...
And less open.
Yeah, most people become less open too. So as you notice, like people getting older and becoming more conservative, that's what's going on there. But that happens naturally to everyone.
We have one over here. Oh yeah, lots of questions here. We have one over here and one over in the third row. Take a few more.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good.
I feel like my self-perception is like very malleable depending on who I'm with. So I went to an improv class, and I felt like I was being set on fire. And I think that if I'd been with a different friend, that I might have like really enjoyed it. And so I wondered, like, the idea that you have a consistent sense of self-perception that is not just totally modulated by like the people that you are around and what they bring out in you is interesting to me. So I wonder if you felt that, like your understanding of your own attributes changed depending on who you were around, the situations you were in.
Yeah, this is a really common phenomenon. It's called the looking glass self, and it basically, and there are other terms for it, but basically it suggests that like the people who you're around kind of shape who you are, and that some researchers even think like your personality is basically entirely a reflection of your friendships and your connections. So, I mean, I noticed that to some degree for myself. Like, if you've ever spent a day around like really funny people, and like at least I find that I'm like funnier after the fact, and that happens to varying degrees in other ways too. Like, rudeness is really contagious. So if someone's like rude to you, like you end up being rude to other people. Yeah. Yeah, definitely something to that.
Did you notice anybody in your life that you didn't tell what you were doing? Did they say anything to you about how different you may have seemed? And then my second question is what you may have held on to the most or had the most friction with changing as you were trying to change it?
Ooh, good questions. I think when I first started, I didn't tell people. Like for the book, I ended up telling people because I was working on it for so long. But when I was first doing this, a friend of mine, I was talking to her on the phone, and as I hung up, I was like, "Love you, bye." And she was like, she texted me after the fact, and she was like, "You love me? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's going on?" And like, I was like, "Oh, sorry." Like, like I had to backpedal from loving her. And the second question, what did I hang on to? So I write about this in the book, but it was really hard for me for a while to feel like I could live without anxiety. Like I really felt like I need anxiety to get things done. If I don't have anxiety, I don't have anything. Like anxiety is my superpower. And that was like very hard to kind of let go of.
Have you let go of it, or are you letting go of it?
I think I still have to remind myself, like when I start getting super anxious, that it's not actually doing anything. Like it's just hurting me and it's not solving the problem.
Right. Do we have any other questions? I have a couple more that we can get us. Okay, one more, and we'll take one from the audience, and we'll wrap up in a sec. Good.
So I feel like looking at personality kind of in a meta sense for a long period of time might make one more neurotic about changing various parts of one's personality. Do you, like, after having written this book, do you still feel like sometimes you do something, you're like, wait, I have to change and like be more open?
Oh yeah, like do I? Yeah, sometimes. Like okay, so I was in a cab coming home from Union Station today, and I just found myself like getting so mad because he didn't take the express lanes, and it takes so much longer if you do. And he's like, "Well, it's $15," and I'm like, "I would like you could have asked me, I would have paid." And I don't know, I was like starting to get really worked up, and I did have to like remind myself in that moment that like this is the kind of like petty BS that I'm not gonna get worked up over anymore. And yeah, but it's still, you know, it still bubbles up occasionally. QED, I guess.
So a quick questions to round us out. Let's say, just hypothetical, there's someone who is in my life and I actually don't like their personality. Can I change someone else?
It's really hard to change someone else. Like you can kind of like motivationally interview them to like see if they would like to change themselves. But yeah, I mean, I have people in my life that I'm like, what are you doing? But you can't, I mean, it's like, you know, getting someone to like get sober or something. Like they have to want to change.
Right. And now we also have this, is it possible that changes in society could change us at scale? That is, imagine an algorithm in social media optimized for fostering agreeableness or extraversion. Is that like science fiction? I mean, I'm looking at the sci-fi and fantasy section here, but is that ludicrous?
So sometimes when I get to really speculating, I start to think that like Trump is making us all meaner and like more aggressive and like less extroverted. Like I think there's like a hunkering down phenomenon during Trump administrations. And then I mean like not during the other ones, like because they're normal. And like I don't know. To me, I think that is true. I think like just like the constant like flood of news that's like really upsetting is upsetting. So I don't know.
I mean, it seems like it's plausible that you could have this kind of personality change at scale, either orchestrated or inadvertent, which is kind of scary. Now, let me ask you another question, and then I'm going to ask you another big theoretical question, then one practical question. Then everyone's going to buy multiple copies of the book that you're going to sign. We know that sort of there's an ideal here in the way that in the Big Five, that is, you want to be open, right? You want to be conscientious.
Yeah.
You want to be extroverted. You want to be agreeable. You don't want to be neurotic. So imagine everybody reads this book and they begin to change, and we have a world where everybody is open, extroverted, agreeable, conscientiousness, and not neurotic. Is that a good world?
You know, I don't know. I don't. So there's like no research on that, obviously. I don't think that would be good. Probably. Like I think you do need some variety. Like I think that we've learned from like hippie utopias where everyone's super open that those like eventually like devolve. A ton of extroverts just like bopping around that can get really annoying. I do think you need some like normal diversity in life. This is really more about like individual people and like changing the things that don't serve them.
Sure. And so why don't you give the audience, we'll wrap up here, why don't you give the audience, like, what's one thing they can do tomorrow? If they have an aspect of their personality that they want to improve, what's one thing they can do tomorrow to get going?
I would sign up for one activity that occurs regularly with the same group of people that it is hard to get out of. Don't just say, like, I'm going to get drinks more with people, because you won't ever pick a day or time. Find something that is happening regularly and join it.
Fantastic advice. So, folks, I for my work, I read a lot of these kinds of books. This is a really good one. I'm serious. This is a really, really good one. So I think you'll really enjoy it. I think you'll get something out of it, and I think you'll be wildly entertained while doing it, and that's a rare combination. So give it up for Olga.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. That is so nice. Thank you. Thank you, guys.